Hello and welcome to Neo Psychology with me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach online psychology lessons for my wonderful students. Today we're carrying on with the Psychopathology unit and we're looking at Lesson 5, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, OCD. Let's rock and roll! Starter. How often have you said or heard someone say, "Oh, I'm so OCD about this"? What does OCD mean? What's the difference between those people that just have little quirks and those that have obsessive compulsive disorder as a severe mental illness? That's what we're going to look at today. So here we are in the Psychopathology unit. We've done 2 lessons on definition of abnormality. We've done a lesson on phobias, a lesson on depression, and today's lesson is on OCD. The third mental disorder in the specification is obsessive compulsive disorder. This involves anxiety similar to phobias and irrational thinking. Okay. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a condition characterized by what and or what behavior, right? It's not too difficult because it's in the name, right? How can you define obsessive compulsive disorder? Well, it's a condition characterized by obsessions and or compulsive behavior. Draw an image to illustrate OCD. Give that a go now, please. Right. Now, as we've seen in the last 2 lessons, there are different characteristics to OCD, but can you match the characteristics with the correct definition? As we should know by now, behavioural characteristics of OCD are ways in which people act. Emotional characteristics of OCD are ways in which people feel, and cognitive characteristics of OCD are ways in which people process information, perception, attention, and thinking. Okay. When describing OCD, students often find it difficult to distinguish between obsessions and compulsions. It may help you to be clear that an obsession is a cognition, i.e. it takes place in the mind. A compulsion is a behavior. It is something you do. Okay? So obsessive thoughts, compulsive behaviors. 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 So what's a compulsion? It's a behavior. What's an obsession? It's a thought. Okay? Obsessive thoughts, compulsive behaviors. Okay? We've got 3 learning objectives today: to explore the behavioural characteristics of OCD, the emotional characteristics of OCD, and the cognitive characteristics of OCD. Let's get started with learning objective 1, to explore the behavioural characteristics of OCD. Okay. The main behavioural characteristic of OCD is, of course, the compulsions, the compulsive behaviour. The behavioural component of OCD is compulsive behaviour. There are 2 elements to compulsive behaviours. Compulsions are repetitive and they reduce anxiety. Compulsions are repetitive. Typically, sufferers of OCD feel compelled to repeat a behaviour. A common example is hand washing, okay? Other compulsive repetitions include counting, you might count in your head, praying, or tidying and ordering groups or objects such as CD collections for those who have them, but no one has CDs anymore. Or containers in a food cupboard, something like that. But compulsions also reduce anxiety. For the vast majority of OCD sufferers, compulsive behaviors are performed in an attempt to manage the anxiety produced by obsessions or obsessive thoughts. So, for example, compulsive hand washing is carried out as a response to an obsessive fear of germs. Compulsively checking, for example, that the door is locked, or compulsively checking that the gas appliance is switched off, is in response to the obsessive thoughts that it might have been left on, okay? So you do these compulsive behaviors because it gives you anxiety, because you have these obsessive thoughts that something bad is going to happen. And as we learned before, another behavioural characteristic is avoidance. The behaviour of OCD sufferers may also be characterised by their avoidance, as they attempt to reduce anxiety by keeping away from situations that trigger it. So sufferers of OCD tend to try to manage their OCD by avoiding situations that trigger anxiety. So for example, sufferers who wash compulsively may avoid coming into contact with germs. However, this avoidance can lead to people to avoid very ordinary situations, such as emptying their rubbish bins, and this can itself interfere with leading a normal life. If, for example, you've got OCD with germs, you might go, right, well, I feel like I can't leave the house today because I'm going to touch something at school or at work. That's going to give me germs, and that's going to lead me to have to do my compulsive behavior of hand washing, and I don't want to have to do that in front of other people, so I'm going to take today off, okay? That is showing how it can affect you in your normal day life. And that are the behavioural characteristics of OCD. Identify one thing you've learned about the behavioural characteristics of OCD. Why do you think learning about this is important? How does this apply in real life? Who is this information useful to? What questions has this raised for you? Okay, that's learning objective 1 done. Explore the behavioural characteristics of OCD. Now, we're now going to move on to learning objective 2. Explore the emotional characteristics of OCD. Anxiety and distress. OCD is regarded as a particularly unpleasant emotional experience because of the powerful anxiety that accompanies both obsessions and compulsions. Obsessive thoughts are unpleasant and frightening, and the anxiety that goes with these can be overwhelming. The urge to repeat a behavior, a compulsion, creates anxiety. So, let's give you an example. Okay, I've got an obsessive thought in my head that my hands are dirty and I've got germs on them. Because they're dirty and they've got germs on them, I'm going to pass that on to my loved ones. My loved ones are going to get ill and they're going to die. This, of course, gives me anxiety. It makes me scared. It makes me distressed. So the way to reduce my stress and anxiety is to perform the behavioural characteristic, the compulsive behaviour of washing my hands. Okay? OCD is often accompanied by depression, so anxiety can be accompanied by low mood and a lack of enjoyment in usual activities. Compulsive behaviour tends to bring some relief for anxiety, but this relief is temporary because, as we know, it's repetitive because it starts again. Guilt and disgust are other emotional characteristics of OCD. As well as anxiety and depression, OCD sometimes involves other negative emotions, such as irrational guilt, for example, over minor moral issues, or disgust, which may be directed against something external, like dirt, or it could be disgust at yourself, that you're succumbing to this. And those are the emotional characteristics of OCD. Identify one thing you've learned about the emotional characteristics of OCD. Why do you think learning about this is important? How does this apply in real life? And what questions has emotional characteristics raised for you? We are flying through this lesson. Those are the emotional characteristics of OCD. Tick! And now we're going to move on and hopefully explore the cognitive characteristics of OCD. Learning objective 3. The cognitive approach is concerned with the ways in which people process information. People suffering from OCD are usually plagued with obsessive thoughts, but they also adopt cognitive strategies to deal with these. So the key cognitive characteristic of OCD is the O in OCD, the obsessions, the obsessive thoughts. The key behavioural characteristic of OCD is the C, the compulsions, the compulsive behaviours. So there's no excuse for not remembering at least one cognitive and one behavioural characteristic. It's in the name, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So the cognitive characteristic of OCD is the O, the obsessive thoughts. Around 90% of OCD sufferers The major cognitive feature of their condition is obsessive thoughts, i.e. thoughts that reoccur over and over again. These vary considerably from person to person, but are always unpleasant. Examples of reoccurring thoughts are worries of being contaminated by dirt and germs, or certainty that a door has been left unlocked and that intruders will enter through it, or impulses to hurt someone. Interestingly, though, people with OCD do have insight into their excessive anxiety. People suffering from OCD are aware that their obsessions and compulsions are not rational. They know it's not rational. In fact, this is necessary for a diagnosis of OCD. People that have OCD, they don't think what I'm doing is perfectly rational. They're aware that it's irrational. And this is the cognitive aspect, because it's about thinking. If someone really believed their obsessive thoughts were based on reality, that would be a symptom of a quite different form of mental disorder. However, in spite of this insight, OCD sufferers experience catastrophic thoughts about the worst case scenarios that might result if their anxieties were justified. They also tend to be hypervigilant, i.e. they maintain constant alertness and keep attention focused on potential hazards. Okay, so obsessive compulsive disorders can be illustrated as a cycle. Okay, you have an obsessive thought. This is a negative thought. Okay, it's something that's irrational and is not true, but it's an obsessive thought that you have. Because it's a negative thought, that causes you to have anxiety. I feel anxious. Okay, the obsessive thought is the cognitive aspect, and that causes you to have anxiety. Anxiety, what type of characteristic has anxiety? That's emotional. It causes you the emotional characteristics of anxiety. Right? I don't want to feel anxious. So what do? I perform my compulsive behaviors, right? Whatever it is, it could be my hand washing, for example. So I do my compulsive behavior, and that's of course the behavioral aspects. And that brings you temporary relief. It makes you feel better, but only temporarily, because again, as we know, OCD is repetitive. These obsessive thoughts, they come back again. What if you haven't done it properly? What if you haven't done this, right? And then it's back, and it's a cycle, and it starts all over again, okay? So if I give you another example, locking the door, okay? I've left the house, I've just gone to work or school. I've left the door, I've closed the door, I've locked it, okay? I leave my house. Now the obsessive thought in my head goes, did you lock the door though? Yes, I locked the door. Yeah, but are you sure? I'm pretty sure. Okay, but what would happen if the door isn't locked? Someone's going to come into your house, someone's going to go and kill everyone in the house, they're going to burn your house down. Oh my God, that's awful, right? What's that going to make you feel? That's going to make me feel anxious, okay? I'm going to feel anxiety. I'm going to feel scared and emotional, okay? So what do I need to do to stop myself feeling anxious? Right, I'm going to go and check to make sure the door is locked. Okay, I go back, I check. Okay, it was locked. I did lock it. Okay. And that makes me feel temporarily better, okay? I have temporary relief. I leave again. But then the obsessive thoughts come back. They reoccur. But did you check it properly? Is it actually locked? I'm pretty sure it was locked. Yeah, but you never know. And remember, if you haven't locked it, someone's going to come in, kill your family, burn your house down. I don't want that. I feel really anxious about that. Right, I need to go back again. I need to go back and check it again. My compulsive behavior is checking the doors locked. Yes, it's locked. Okay, right. Can I please leave now? Yes, I feel temporarily better. And you leave. But then again, the obsessive thought comes back again. It's recurring. You can't stop it, okay? And that's how it works. Here's an application question. Jazz suffers from OCD. She describes her condition as follows. I'm constantly anxious about catching diseases from other people. I can't get thoughts and pictures of dirt out of my mind. Every day I clean my whole house and wash my hands hundreds of times each day. When anyone comes to the house, I make them wash their hands before I can go near them. I know this is ridiculous, but I can't help it. It makes me feel better, but only for a little while. Right, answer these two questions, please. 1, identify the behavioural, the emotional and the cognitive aspects of Jazz's state. And 2, OCD can be illustrated as a cycle, as we saw. Use this to identify the obsessive thoughts and the compulsive behaviours of Jazz. Create the cycle and put in Jazz and how she's feeling about her obsessions and her compulsions. 5 minutes, Give that a go now, please, right? Give it a go. Good luck. Okay. Identify the behavioural, emotional and cognitive aspects of Jazz's state. Jazz's behavioural symptoms include washing her hands, cleaning her house and making visitors shower are part of her behavioural symptoms. Her emotional symptom is anxiety with brief relief resulting from her compulsive behaviour. Her cognitive symptoms include reoccurring thoughts of disease and images of dirt. She has good insight that her anxiety and behaviour is irrational, and again, that is a cognitive characteristic. So, OCD can be illustrated as a cycle. Let's have a look at what Jazz's OCD would be expressed like in a cycle. Okay, so Jazz's OCD expressed as a diagram would look something like this. She has the obsessive thoughts of images and dirt, which gives her anxiety, which is the emotional characteristics, which causes her to do her compulsive behavior, her hand washing, her house cleaning, and those are the behavioral aspects, the behavioral characteristics. And the hand washing and the house cleaning gives her temporary relief, but as we know, it is reoccurring. So those cognitive characteristics of obsessive thoughts, of images of dirt come back again. Okay, and the cycle starts all over again. And those are the cognitive characteristics of OCD. We're ticking it off. Right, we are now moving on to the plenary. Right, watch this video about OCD. Here we go.
No matter what I tried, the thoughts kept coming. I had horrible thoughts about hurting my fiancé. The only thing that made them go away was counting my tens.
I knew I unplugged my curling iron every morning. I was positive I did. But as soon as I got out the door, the thoughts started. Thoughts that I left it on and that it would start a fire. I had to go back and check. Again and again.
My apartment building has a speed bump on the way out. Every time I drove over it, I was terrified I ran someone over. I had to turn around, get out, and check. I never got out of my parking lot.
Every public surface I touched felt full of germs. The only way I'd feel better was to wash my hands. I did it 20 times a day sometimes even more. These are the voices of obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. OCD is a serious condition that causes great distress and really impacts people's lives. People become overwhelmed by their thoughts and anxiety and feel like hostages to the rituals that help take away that anxiety. I know. One of these voices is mine. People with OCD experience obsessions, which are specific thoughts that are intense and intrusive. People don't choose to have them, and they're often very distressing. Obsessions make it hard to concentrate or get anything done. A lot of times, these thoughts are about germs or safety, but they could be about anything, really. In my case, it was my curling iron. If you asked me, I would tell you I know I unplugged it. I remember doing it. But the thoughts that I didn't were so strong, telling me I left it on. It was so scary, and it made me feel unsafe, like my house might burn down, all because of my curling iron. The second symptom of OCD is compulsions. These are ritual behaviors, and people with OCD do them to help deal with the anxiety, horror, or distress they feel because of their obsessive thoughts. There are many types of compulsive behaviors, but they often focus on washing or cleaning, checking on things for safety, or repeating words or numbers. In my case, I had to check on that curling iron. I came back to my house, went upstairs, saw it was unplugged, left again for work, and then I would repeat it, all over again. It was really tough for me to get to work on any given day. I knew I didn't need to do this at all, but it felt totally out of control. There's good news. OCD is treatable. Several types of treatment are effective, and people with OCD can overcome their obsessive thoughts and ritual behaviors that have controlled their lives. cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the most effective treatment. In CBT, people work hard to challenge their thoughts and change the behaviors that follow. There is a specific type of CBT that is used just for those of us with OCD. It's called Exposure and Response Prevention, or ERP, and it works to help us delay or resist ritual compulsions and cope with the resulting anxiety in a different manner. Over time, the anxiety becomes less disruptive and can even disappear. In addition, many people find relief from a specific medication that helps with getting those obsessive thoughts under control. Several SSRIs are used with OCD, and they really make a difference for a lot of people. A combination of ERP and medication is often the best choice for many people. It was for me. The medication took the edge off my anxiety, and my thoughts about the curling iron got a lot less distressing. In therapy, I learned how to postpone going back to check on it. It was so hard at first, but my therapist guided me in doing this, and I learned to get through the anxiety. Eventually, I proved to myself I could do it. Obsessive-compulsive disorder really changes people's lives, often causing them to feel like the disturbing thoughts and rituals have power over them. But with evidence-based treatment, it doesn't have to be that way. People can learn to challenge their thoughts and manage their behavior. They can take control of their lives again. I know. I did.
There we go. That was lesson 5, OCD. Next lesson is lesson 6, and we're going to have a look at the behavioural approach to explaining phobias. And there we have it. Well done, my neo-psychologists. Great work today. I'm proud of you all. I've been Mr. Neo. God bless and peace.
I'm feeling like Will. I feel like a prince. I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills, cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels. I wanted to flex, they told me to chill. I'm making a flip. My life is a flick, now load up the film.